The morning I handed my son the keys to my truck to help me move the last few boxes, I remember thinking, this is it. This is what 40 years of work is for. Not the money, not the house. The moment your kid shows up and helps his old man start the next chapter. I had no idea that same son was about to teach me the hardest lesson of my life. I was 64 years old. My wife, Diane, had been gone 13 months by then. Pancreatic cancer, 8 weeks from diagnosis to the end. People say that's merciful, how fast it happened, and I used to nod along because what else do you say? But there's nothing merciful about watching someone disappear that quickly. One day she's at the kitchen table clipping coupons, and then one morning you wake up and the house is so quiet you can hear the refrigerator hum from 2 rooms away. I sold the house that September. Our house, the one we bought when my son was in 2nd grade, back when the neighborhood was still considered up and coming, and the backyard still had a rusted swing set I kept meaning to replace. 4 bedrooms, a garage that smelled like motor oil and old wood. I sold it for $208,000, and after the mortgage payoff and the realtor's cut, I walked away with a little over $145,000. I put $60,000 into a certificate of deposit at my credit union and kept the rest liquid, because my son said it made more sense to have access to it while I figured out my next move. He wasn't wrong. I was still figuring things out. My son, I'll just call him my son here, had been asking me for months to move in with him and his wife. Their house had a finished basement with its own entrance, its own bathroom, a small kitchenette. He said it made sense. He said he wanted to be there for me after his mother passed. He said a lot of things. His wife's name is Renee. We'd never been particularly close, she and I. She was polite in the way people are polite when they're managing you rather than actually liking you. But I never held that against her. Plenty of people are like that. She kept a clean, organized house, and my son clearly loved her, and that was enough for me. They had 2 kids, my grandchildren, a boy of 9 and a girl of 6. Those 2 were the real reason I said yes. It wasn't the convenience or the money I'd save on rent. It was them. I wanted to be the grandfather who was actually there, who watched them get on the school bus, who taught the boy how to fix a bike chain, who read the girl her bedtime stories. I wanted that more than almost anything else in my life at that point. So I said yes. The arrangement was loose, the way family arrangements tend to be. I paid my son $900 a month, his idea, though I'd have offered something close to that anyway. I covered my own groceries, my own prescriptions, my own gas. I tried to stay out of the way. Most evenings we ate dinner together, and for a while it felt like something I could settle into. The first few months were fine. Better than fine, some days. Then things started shifting in ways I couldn't quite name at first. Small things. My son would mention, almost in passing, that they were looking at a new roof, that the furnace was aging out, that the kids' school had switched to a paid curriculum platform with a steep annual fee. I never asked where he was going with it. I just listened, and then, almost without noticing, I started offering. Here's $300 for the roof deposit. Let me cover that school fee, it's nothing. $100 here, a couple hundred there, it added up. But I told myself that's just what family does. I want to be clear that I'm not a naive man. I spent 37 years in facilities management for a manufacturing company, negotiating contracts, managing budgets, dealing with vendors who'd smile at you and double bill you the moment you looked away. But grief makes you want to be useful. Nobody tells you that part. You walk around with an ache that has no address, and when someone gives you a way to make a person you love a little more comfortable, you take it, because doing nothing feels unbearable. I noticed the credit card issue around March. My son had asked to borrow it back in January. Some contractor needed a card on file to hold an early appointment for the basement bathroom, and mine had a higher limit than his. He'd pay it back within the week. He did, and I never asked for the card back. That's on me. By March, checking my statement online, I saw a charge I didn't recognize. A home goods store 20 minutes away, $417. I hadn't been there. I asked my son about it that evening, casually, while he made coffee. He didn't even hesitate. "Oh, sorry," he said. "Renee needed some things for the upstairs bathroom. Since the card was already there, it must have slipped his mind to mention it. He'd pay me back. He didn't. The next statement showed a charge at a nice restaurant, one we never went to as a family, a charge at a sporting goods store, a charge at a clothing boutique. Small enough amounts individually that I might have chalked each one up to an oversight. Together, they told a different story. I didn't say anything yet. I was watching. Then, in early May, Renee's father came for Sunday dinner. He's a man in his late 60s, retired from a modest career in insurance sales, and he'd spent the years since developing strong opinions about other people's money. He showed up that Sunday with a bottle of wine and the manner of a man who'd recently been told something about you that he really shouldn't know. Dinner seemed fine on the surface. The kids were there. My son made his barbecue chicken everyone always compliments. After the grandkids wandered off to watch something on a tablet and Renee started clearing plates, her father leaned back in his chair and said to me, almost conversationally, "So, Walter, I hear you did pretty well on the house sale." "Word gets around," he said, smiling. I looked at my son. He was staring at the table. I told Renee's father yes, I'd done reasonably well without offering a number. He said it was good to have a cushion at our age, wasn't it? Then, almost like he was thinking out loud, he mentioned a timeshare property down in Destin, a good investment really, and how he was a little short on his end of things at the moment. There it was. I let a beat pass, took a sip of my iced tea, and said calmly that I wasn't in a position to make that kind of investment right now. He said he wasn't asking for an investment, just a loan between family, and that he'd pay it back. I said we weren't family, and the table went completely silent. My son finally looked up. "Dad, come on," he said, in that voice, the one that means you're embarrassing me. The same voice I used to hear when he was 15, and I'd said something uncool in front of his friends, except he was 35 now, and I was the one who'd just been ambushed at my own dinner table. I said I was tired and headed downstairs, thanked them for dinner, carried my plate to the sink and went to my room. I didn't sleep that night. I pulled up the credit card statement again, checked my savings account, and sat at the small desk in the corner of the basement doing the math. Over 4 months, between what I'd offered voluntarily and what had simply been charged without a word, my son had moved roughly $6,400 out of my pocket. Some of it I'd given freely. Roughly $1,200 had been taken without asking. $1,200 isn't a fortune. But that wasn't what kept me up. What kept me up was picturing my son sitting at that table, staring at the wood, while his father-in-law asked me to fund a timeshare, because that meant they'd talked about me, about my money, about what I had, about what they might do with it. And my son had sat there and let it happen, maybe even encouraged it. My own son had looked at me and seen a resource. That was the thing that cracked me open. I want to be fair, because I've thought about this a long time, and fairness is something I owe myself. My son isn't a bad person. I still believe that. He's someone who married a woman who spends freely, with a father-in-law who has very particular ideas about how money should flow through a family, and somewhere along the way he started prioritizing their comfort over my dignity. That's a kind of weakness. I understand it, even if I can't excuse it. But understanding something doesn't mean accepting it. The next morning was a Monday. The grandkids had school, Renee left early for work, and my son came downstairs around 8 with a mug of coffee, clearly hoping to smooth things over. He sat across from my desk and said he was sorry about the night before, that his father-in-law sometimes didn't read the room well. I let him finish. Then I asked how long he'd had access to my credit card. He said, "Dad, come on." I asked again. "A few months," he admitted. He'd meant to talk to me about it. It was temporary, they'd had some unexpected expenses. I asked how much had been charged without my knowledge, and he went quiet. I told him I'd already added it up. Then I asked the question I needed to hear answered out loud. Had he told his father-in-law how much money I'd walked away with from the house sale? He didn't answer for a long time. Long enough that I already had my answer. Finally, he said it had come up, that his father-in-law had asked how I was doing financially after the move, and he'd mentioned a number. He mentioned a number. I sat with that for a moment. I told him I loved him, and I meant it, and I said it out loud that morning, so it wouldn't get confused with what came next. Then I told him I'd be moving out by the end of the month. I'd finish paying that month's contribution since I'd already committed to it, but I wouldn't be renewing anything after that, and I needed the credit card back that day. He protested, said I was overreacting, that his father-in-law was harmless, that it had just been an awkward dinner. Maybe I was overreacting, I told him. But whether I was or not, I'd made my decision, and I'd appreciate it if he respected it. He left the card on the desk and went back upstairs without another word. I didn't hear from Renee at all that day. I'm still not sure whether that surprised me. I spent the next 2.5 weeks quiet and focused. I called my credit union, opened a new checking account, moved my savings, canceled the old card, and had a new one issued to a P.O. box I'd kept for years for miscellaneous mail. An old colleague pointed me toward a 55 and over community about 15 miles away. Nice units, month-to-month leases, and a workshop space on the grounds that residents could reserve. That last part sold me. I've been woodworking since my 30s. It's the thing I do when I need to remember what I'm still capable of. I found a 2-bedroom unit on the second floor with a small balcony facing west, signed the lease on a Thursday afternoon, and stood alone in the empty living room for a few minutes afterward, just listening to the quiet. It felt different from the quiet after Diane died. That quiet had weight to it. This one felt like something waiting to begin. I told my son the move date. He offered to help. I said I'd hire movers instead, and I did. 2 guys who finished the whole job in under 3 hours for $220, less than some of what had already disappeared from my card without permission. The morning of the move, my granddaughter came downstairs in her pajamas while I was taping up the last box. She asked where I was going. I told her I'd found my own place, that it was really nice, and that she and her brother could visit whenever their parents said it was okay. She asked if I was sad. I told her I was actually pretty okay. She thought about that for a second, said she'd miss me, and hugged me around the middle for about 10 seconds, the kind of hug only a kid can give, completely unself-conscious and total. Then she padded back upstairs in her socks. I stood in that basement a little while longer just breathing. My son didn't come down before I left. It's been 8 months since the move. I still see my grandchildren regularly. To their credit, Renee and my son have never tried to use the kids as leverage, and I'm more grateful for that than I've ever told them. I see the grandkids most weekends. Neutral ground, a park, a diner, sometimes just driving around with the radio on. My grandson is obsessed with trains right now, which I find genuinely charming. My granddaughter told me last week she wants to be a veterinarian. I told her she'd be a great one. My son and I still talk, though the calls are shorter now, and we keep to safer topics. I don't bring up the money. He's never apologized. I've come to accept that this is probably the relationship we have now, at least for a while, and I try not to mourn the one I thought we had. Renee's father did buy that timeshare. I saw a photo of him smiling on some balcony, posted to one of those family photo-sharing apps my grandson showed me how to use. Good for him, I suppose. As for me, I'm up most mornings before 6 now. I make coffee in a French press, something I never had time for while I was working, and I drink it out on the balcony as the sun comes up over the parking lot. It's not a mountain view, but it's mine. I have workshop time twice a week, and I'm building a small side table right now, cherry wood, simple joinery, no nails holding anything together by force. There's something satisfying about that, about cutting the pieces right so they simply fit. And if they don't fit, you don't force them. You step back, and you start again. I've gotten pretty good at starting again. And somewhere along the way, I stopped grieving the son I thought I had, and started building a quieter, steadier life around the people who actually show up for me, which it turns out was enough all along. If this story reminded you that your dignity is worth more than anyone's comfort, take a moment to like this video, share your own experience in the comments, and subscribe to Aftermathtales for more real, honest stories about family, loss, and starting over. Your support means more than you know now, sir.